Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Robotic Process Automation 101. A little about Forvis Mazar. Forvis Mazar is an independent member of Forvis Mazar Global, a leading global professional services network. Ranked among the largest public accounting firms in the U.S., our team members are dedicated to providing an unmatched client experience through the delivery of assurance, tax, and consulting services. As part of the firm's consulting services, Business Technology Services provides analysis, design, implementation, upgrade, training, and support services for accounting and ERP systems and sales and marketing CRM systems. Our end-to-end solutions can help clients achieve their digital transformation goals. At a glance, these are the technologies Business Technology Services supports. Today, we'll be focusing on robotic process automation, also known as RPA. Our presenters today are Kevin Dodd, Mandy Funk, and Darren Peacock. Kevin is a lead consultant with Forvis Mazar. He specializes in Microsoft Power Platform and Azure Cloud Services, helping clients leverage the cloud for business advancement and data optimization. With 15 years of experience across industries such as manufacturing, medical, and real estate, he has consistently focused on the Microsoft stack. His experience includes designing and building integrations to support client needs. Mandy has nearly a decade of experience with Microsoft Dynamics applications, including Dynamics 365 Sales, Customer Service, Finance, Power BI, Power Automate, and Power Apps. Her skills lie in business system analysis, enhancing end-user tools and processes. With a background in manufacturing, she has expanded into various industries with a focus on helping clients improve their business processes through efficient project management and security administration. Darren brings more than 6 years of consulting experience across various industries, including construction equipment, funeral services, supply chain, telecom, and finance. He specializes in migrating on-premises software to the cloud and implementing new CRM and Microsoft Power Platform solutions, focusing on modernizing workflows and automating business processes with Power Platform, Dataverse, and Azure tools. His experience includes customizing Microsoft Dynamics 365 sales and marketing applications and developing RPA solutions and app-to-app integrations. Again, thank you for participating in today's webinar. Now I will turn over the presentation to Kevin.
Thank you, Sarah. As Sarah said, my name's Kevin. I'm part of the Insights and Automations team. So first and foremost, thank every single one of you for taking the time out of your day to attend our webinar and hear us talk about robotic process automation. As it says, this is RPA, or Robotic Process Automation 101. So the foundation of this is understanding what is RPA, or robotic process automation, how it works, and what it can really provide. So today's agenda, we're going to define the fundamentals of RPA, again, robotic process automation. We're going to include its definition, capabilities, and limitations. We're going to identify potential RPA use cases within an organization. We're going to explain the initial steps for what it looks like to start with RPA. And then we've got a nice demo at the end to kind of really show you what it looks like. Once we get through all of that, we're going to step into a little bit of a Q&A, which I guess really is going to be the next slide, because we got a small question for you. How often does your organization engage in manual data transfer processes? Is it daily, weekly, monthly, or potentially almost never?
Jealous of anyone who answers D. I will say, right? Prior to joining Forvis Mazar, I would say daily. I had to do like CRM work, and so much of it was manual.
Oh yeah, there's been many, many hours of my life spent managing tickets inside of a service desk, or, you know, updating a report here and there, just whatever the notes are from the day. It's always a treat, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And for our accounting friends on today's webinar, let's try to get you out of Excel and manual data entry. All right.
So very surprising numbers there. More than half has daily manual data entry. I am teasing there. That's actually a very common threat we get. So to really start stepping into things, let's begin. We're going to start by defining the fundamentals of RPA, which defines what it is, what it can do, and where its limitations exist. The most important piece to understand about RPA is it's software. It is fundamentally a program that is here to follow whatever rules for your process as you've defined it, and really take some of those actions that people will do, that 55% of daily manual data entry, and see if we can't bring that number a lot lower. It's software that takes the drudgery of our day-to-day activities that don't provide a lot of value to the person, but are really important that they happen for an organization. It's one of the things that, well, really fundamentally, it's about us, the humans, the people, right? We're here to, that's what an automation is for, is to save us the time that we want to spend on important tasks. We want to spend on things that bring us, new skills or improve the working conditions or drive a business forward. And it's really just to help pull out some of the hard parts of the day-to-day, repetition of just having a job. And it's really because, well, the humans are the important part of a business. Without us, the business doesn't exist. It's just software running somewhere inside of a data center. And it'd be software owned by a business, which requires people. So automation is very much about showing the value of a human doing human level tasks and human level actions. And that's why it's such an important thing to explore, because RPA is that lower level of automation that allows you to connect and interact with all these pieces that may not have easily accessible data points. There might be web pages that are older or have less integration points or no APIs, or there's not a database to connect to. So this is one of the many softwares available that help bring that all together. So what is it? Well, again, it's software that follows your rules. It's software that's going to actively do what you tell it to do. So to do a robotic process automation, it is the act of configuring that software to go and replicate your behavior, whether that's going to a web page and filling out data on a web form, or combining various files in Excel together to do whatever may need to be done with that data after it's all combined. Or maybe it's a whole bunch of Excel reports that all have the same columns of data that need to be combined and dropped off into a file share or emailed out to our, executive team, or whatever it may need to be done. It's one of these areas that the more you understand the rules of the process that you are doing and trying to automate, the better you'll be able to answer, can RPA even accomplish this task? So RPA goes hand in hand with not only understanding how your process happens internally, but also, do you really actually understand all of the rules of your process? And can you put it down in a set of tasks to be completed inside of an RPA? Now, Darren and Mandy are going to go in a little bit deeper on what it looks like and how those actually function here in just a little bit. But one of the most important things we want to get out of the way is, where should you start if you are new to automation? Now, when it comes to RPA, our team likes Power Automate Desktop. We like Power Automate Desktop because Microsoft supports Microsoft. Their products are tightly integrated with all of their other products. If you've spent any time using the Microsoft Office 365 suite, you know how interconnected Teams is with SharePoint, with your Outlook, with your Microsoft Forms, and all of the other components that go right alongside it. If you've used Business Central or F&O, you've probably seen the little button that says Automate. It will take you to Power Automate. And the piece that comes with not only knowing that this software exists, and you likely already have licensing for it, is, how do I begin learning it? One of the best places to go is really to go and get the Microsoft online training. They have Microsoft training days, which are free online training that you can go and attend. And it's a full-blown Microsoft webinar that is focused on learning the technology or service. And it's very, very level by level. They have the 100, 200, 300 classes. And those webinars go on all the time. They also have one that's linked in the QR code here, which is an app in a day or RPA in a day, which is specific to either making a Power Apps or what we're talking about here today with robotic process automation. And that's all instructor-led as well. And again, the requirements there is the cost of time to do the registration and attend. One of the things that doesn't always work on that front is if you have a schedule that doesn't support attending that kind of training and you don't have time to sit for, multiple 2-hour sessions over the course of a week, you need something that's more on demand, more modularized. And that's where Microsoft Learn really kind of starts to shine. They have hundreds of module paths that are all focused on the various aspects of the Power Platform, not just Power Automate Desktop, but Power Automate the Cloud Service, Power BI, and so on and such. So to kind of get an idea of what does this look like, we've got a short little video here that's going to show you not only the RPA software on the left-hand side, but you're also going to see 2 other programs. One will be Excel, which I imagine most folks are familiar with, and then another one, which is just a Contoso Microsoft app that lets you simulate putting in data entry here. Now, assuming this behaves for me. So left-hand side is Power Automate Desktop. That is the RPA software itself. And as you can see, it has various little lines that it's moving through with that blue bar. The blue bar shows you where it is actively at in the process that it is running through. And you can see here that it is going ahead and filling out all of these fields inside of this Contoso software. And then afterwards, it's outputting that same data to the Excel spreadsheet in the background. And as you can see, data matches up, data is accurate. This is one of the major benefits of RPA, is that it gives a layer of efficiency that, assuming it's built correctly and the process has firmly defined rules, is typically more efficient than what we can do as people. It's a robot. It's not going to have the fatigue of clicking through menus, clicking onto various cells, punching in various pieces of data, and it's not going to get bored. It's just going to keep chugging away at the exact same speed that it's working at the whole time. Additionally, in that same vein of minimizing fatigue for people, an RPA is going to do the exact same thing every single time because it's software, it's a program. You've told it to do XYZ, it will do exactly XYZ every single time. So long as all of your rules about how the RPA has to behave and function are clear and they don't have any little nuanced pieces that a human would be expected to do, your accuracy of data and going back and fixing stuff is going to be much, much better. And that brings us to our third point. Again, automation's about the people. It's about the humans. It's about us, right? We're the important piece. The software just helps us do our job. So it allows for resource reallocation. There are so many tasks that businesses have that require a person to go and think about, plan, understand, and really decide how it should work, or even requires a human level intelligence to even be able to do. Most businesses will frequently struggle with headcount. They don't have enough people to do all of the things. So one of the best ways to be able to do that is free up the people you have to focus on important business activities that aren't just, let's punch in this data to Excel. And then on top of all 3 of those points is the scalability of automation. Computer hardware and virtual machines are able to be purchased and brought online way, way faster than it is to work with a recruiting team and interviewing people and then onboarding them and getting them through orientation and then getting them introduced to their team and getting them understanding to what their tasks are and then teaching them the process. That piece is still important. It still has to happen because, again, the humans are the important piece here. But automation is able to be brought online on any number of machines rapidly. So it can grow with your business as it's growing, or it can grow with your business as the business is growing as well, and make sure that you don't have a loss of productivity if your business grows much faster than you can bring headcount in to assist. So we've talked about how automation is about the people. Well, it's also about some of the numbers. So we talk about automation as saving man hours. Now, there is an unbelievable amount of things that you could go through and automate. And not all automations are equal. So 3 case study examples that our team has completed and been able to go and get the actual numbers behind what were the savings and what does it look like, and really, what's the ROI? That's what we care about. We've made an investment of man hours and time, or even potentially money, to develop and build an automation with the goal of saving money. So 2 of these examples are exceptional automations that saved an unbelievable amount of time for their headcount. One of them is manual order entry. It's a manual. It's an old AS400 green screen system where every single line of an order has to be punched in. By automating that process, they were able to achieve a 96% return on their investment. Another process they had was moving out customer-related files and unzipping the zip files, and then moving all of those files into a SharePoint folder, which is a process that takes a while because you're copying files down, you're unzipping files. You then have to make sure all those files land in the right spot. And there's a very high cost and manual piece for this for a human to do. So the return there is more than 100%. So significant savings in just the man hours alone. But we have other pieces, right? The query data and email results down here at the bottom only has an 8% ROI. Still a very important automation, still something that brought a lot of value to that team. But the ROI has to be measured a little bit differently, because it's not always about cost savings. Sometimes it's about making sure that a monthly task happens the same exact way every single time to make sure it never gets forgotten about. But if your primary metric is your ROI, this third project may go to the bottom of the automation list, because there is more valuable things that could be automated that frees up more valuable staff. So to kind of hit on what some of these ideas would be and kind of like what you could think about is kind of anywhere. Whatever process you're working on, whatever your business is doing, there is likely something that can be automated and offloaded to a computer, right? We talked about data entry and data migration, right? Combining files, uploading them to SharePoint and all that. But you can even go so far as to start using things like OCR, which is optical character recognition, things that you can, or it's a way of pulling data out of documents. So that way a human doesn't have to go through, read it, and then manually enter. It can just automatically be pulled off the document. Or if you expand out into things like the Azure Document Intelligence Services, you can even pull out whole swaths of contract information or whatever it may be. Maybe you have a specific onboarding process that your customers need to go through, and they say, hey, I want to know more about your product and how it works and what it does. It doesn't always require a human to make that first contact. Maybe first contact is, here's a list of links to check out. Do you want to schedule a time to talk to a person? A human doesn't have to send that email when it's requested. It can be offloaded. And then even inside of the IT department, new hire onboarding is something that I have heard people struggle with and complain about over and over and over again, because it's people onboarding all kinds of other new employees that have security groups they need to be part of. They have to have specific sets of software, and on and on and on this goes. You can offload these tasks. You can give it to an automation such as RPA, which can interact with whatever you need it to. Or maybe you've got complex inventory needs that are, things are coming in and out of a warehouse frequently. You can enable these warehouse workers or staff that are managing all of that to not only be more efficient, but also increase their accuracy by offloading some of the more drudgery-based tasks. Now, as much as I would love to say that automation is actually all roses and rainbows and happiness, it is software. And every single one of us has at some point battled a piece of software on our computer. And automations are no different. They really can turn out to be kind of fragile. And I don't mean that you're going to have automations built out and they're always going to be bad and they're always going to have problems and they're always not going to work. But an automation doesn't have our level of intelligence. It doesn't think like we do. It's software, and the software has been said, do X, Y, Z specifically. So if I get X, Y, Z and a slice of tomato for some reason, it's not going to know what to do with the slice of tomato. So when automations are built out, the environment that they run in has to be consistent. It has to be predictable. The data that you pass into the automation, if we say something is currency, it needs to be formatted as currency. If we say something is a date time field, it needs to be a date time field. If you have things like this inside of your data or inside of your process that can have variation or things that can change from day to day, your automation has to account for that. Otherwise, it can kind of blow you up and you can start getting wild results and the accuracy can plummet quite a bit. Again, garbage in, garbage out. So it's one of the things to keep account of. Now, RPA also requires a computer to run on. It's software. Just like every other program we run, it's got to run from somewhere. While personal automations, the ones that run on our workstations, the one that we use for our day-to-day activities, those can absolutely run on our local computer. But to really get the scale that automation supports and to really grow with an organization, RPA needs a dedicated system to run on, whether that is a cloud-hosted server or if it is physical hardware that's been provisioned in your local data center or co-location and you're running on virtual machines. You have to have it available. Otherwise, you're limited in the number of RPAs you can run because you only have so many computers to run them on. In addition to kind of deciding if it's the provision hardware route or if it's the go to the Microsoft cloud or whatever cloud service you may prefer, the answer is not going to be the same for everyone. Each company is going to have their own things to consider because not all IT departments are as advanced as every other company's IT departments. And that IT maturity can have a significant impact on how well automations run. Again, if the automation's running in an environment that changes consistently, has network outages, or maybe just doesn't even have enough, CPU and memory to even do the tasks that have been automated, you can get very, very wildly different results. And there's always that cost analysis of purchasing the actual hardware versus a monthly recurring fee from a cloud-hosted solution. So there's many, many considerations in there, but it's important that if you are looking to grow RPA beyond just your own personal workstation, you also have to consider the hardware and environments that hardware is going to live in. Now, this might be the most important slide that I talk about today. There is nothing in your automation that will be more important than actually taking the time to do testing. Out of all of the technical projects I've worked on in the entirety of my career, this is the area where I've seen the most projects fall down. And automation in particular, how quickly an automation can come together and how quickly you can get to that end result and see that, oh, not only did I build this, it works. It can create an unrealistic expectation of how simple an automation is to build. Now, again, automation is something that has got a very low floor to entry and a very, very high skill ceiling. So wherever you're at in that process, it's important to take that into account. And again, as we talked about, the training's available by Microsoft. So there's plenty to learn when that gap shows up. But if you're not sure how your automation is going to work, what it's going to do if you give it weird data, and you haven't taken that time to understand the environment it's going to run in, you haven't done testing that's representative of what it will actually be doing in a production environment, you can get weird results. You can have things happen in your automation that you can't explain to the people who are relying on it to work every single time. So we all have things that are incredibly important in our day-to-day, and all of those things compete with this time to sit and just run through a process over and over and over again. it is critically important to take the time to test, because otherwise you can really damage the trust that the people have in your automation. Now, I've mentioned a number of times that an automation, even RPA, is only going to do exactly what it has been coded and developed to do, even if it's wrong. If your automation has been built in a way that the data it's getting is not what you tested with, it's going to do the wrong thing at the exact same speed, which is typically a lot faster than a human doing the same wrong thing at human speeds. This can result in your automation in generating a massive amount of bad data, which in a production environment can mean a large amount of time doing cleanup and recovery from an automation that maybe just didn't actually got a date field, and maybe it went through and outputted that date field as a number and started putting in a whole bunch of bad data into whatever system needs to consume it. So again, that taking that time to test and verify and understand what your automation does in all the various, scenarios that you can consider is really, really important. So before I hand it over to Mandy, we got one more for you. What is the biggest challenge your organization faces with its current data transfer processes? I know some of you might say all of these, but out of the four, time-consuming tasks, data accuracy and errors, integration with different systems, or a lack of skilled personnel, which one is going to be the most impactful for you?
That question of how you move data today. Yeah. In my experience, the exporting from one system and importing to the CRM system, I would choose A. It was just time consuming.
Oh, easily. Especially when you start talking about where you've got, I had one of the BC guys explaining to me the backpack files and how you can bring all that data into the system. I was like, man, that sounds complex. But I don't know.
Right, and then mapping everything if that has to be manual.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, it looks like time-consuming tasks and integration with different systems are the biggest pain points here. So, as stated, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Mandy Funk and let them cover for us.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. All right, everyone. So Kevin really defined what RPA is, and I'm sure all of us have different ideas just bouncing around in our head and going, okay, yes, I think RPA would be a good candidate for this and for this. But we really need to take a step back now that we know what RPA is and figure out where to actually start. We want to really start looking within our area, making lists, talking to our coworkers and our other team members, and really thinking about, is this process repetitive? Is this process time consuming? And work through, just create as long as list as you want, because as we go through the next few slides, and we're going to talk about discovering and really digging into where we're at. And one key, I think, when we start on automations is it's okay to start small. Use those small, simple automations to build your confidence when creating RPA processes, and then just keep working yourself up to greater and greater ones. We always have the saying on our team that just about, or lots of things can be automated, but the bigger question is, should it be automated? And to figure out if something should be automated is where we're really going to dig into kind of this hyper automation process, really identifying those areas where RPA could be beneficial to our teams and our organization, and then leading into doing a full discovery, and then finally the implementation, if those ideas that we identified actually get past our discovery phase. And within our discovery phase, we are really taking the time to dig into the process that we believe should be automated. And that is, sitting down with our end users, talking to them, talking about, watching them perform this process and say, all right, what are your steps? Can you walk me through step by step? And then start asking questions after you've watched them, or during, if they're up for questions while they're performing this task to show you. Ask in the middle of it and have them pause and take notes. If everybody is agreeable, record the process so you can go back later and really view that whole process from beginning to end, and just start small that way, and really start digging into there and start looking at if this process should be automated. And what I mean by that is, if the what's the level of effort that the manual process takes? What's the level of effort it would take to automate this process? Is automating this process valuable to the organization, or is this process something that is already on a roadmap for change management down the road? What is the reusability of this process? Is this a process that is just focused for one person and one person only, that they're going to use once a month or once a year? Or is this a process that is a daily reoccurrence that can be used over and over again by multiple people? And then when you're planning to automate, is there a business user that is willing to sponsor this automation? And sponsorship is highly important because it allows the team to have a backer, to have somebody that's they're cheerleading them on and saying, this is important to our organization, we want this to go forward, let's go, you can do this, and go forward that way. The biggest part of discovery phase is being curious. The slide shows the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. And those are always great questions to ask when you're looking into automating something. You have your documents now, you have your recordings, you understand this process. This process, there's still questions. Does it have logical steps? Are there defined rules? There's no, you're not just taking something out of the current process and just doing one small section. You're not scope creeping. You really are, you know everything for this process, front to back to front, the whole way through. So now we've done this, we're doing this discovery, we're digging into what our team believes can be automated. And, we still have our list, and we've done discovery on several of these items. Now we kind of want to look at doing a ranking of where we begin, which process should we start with? And again, that will happen with, do we have a sponsor for this project? What is the cost to our organization? Is this cost, is this ready to stay within defined terminology and everything. Still on discovery, because this is, to me, this is very important that we will, because if you know everything about this process ahead of time before you get to the implementation stage, it allows that implementation to go a lot smoother. The people that are doing the development have all of your notes, they have all of your recordings. You are able to talk to them, so they're not having to go back and try to talk to end users to get the actual scope of the process. And some key factors to think about when you are looking to automate a process are some of these. What is the level of effort? Create a matrix. Is it a low effort, low value? Is it a high effort, low value? And use those to weigh which processes really should be automated and which should not. What is the expectation from within the organization on ROI positive? Is the organization expecting an immediate return on investment? Are they expecting a 1 to 2 year return on investment? And that does play a factor and should be considered when you decide which automations to move forward with. It's very important to remember that it is okay to say no to an automation. Sometimes processes, it does not make sense to go forward with the automation. Some examples here is the cost is greater than the benefit. The current process doesn't have any defined rules. There may be a few, but the whole process isn't clearly defined, which makes it very difficult, as Kevin mentioned, that automation just follows the steps. If those steps aren't defined and those rules aren't defined, automation will be wonky, for a crazy term. It's not going to work properly. Not having someone to back you on your project, being that champion or sponsor. And then one on this list is the process is just one and done, meaning you are doing it for one event and it will never be used again. Now, I have it on this list as probably shouldn't be used or probably shouldn't be automated, but there are times that is okay. For one, it's one of your first projects, you're gaining your confidence. You're building confidence in your automation skills, or you're building confidence in using automation throughout your organization. Those processes, do have value and can return a positive ROI as well. Another good reason to say no is if the time frame is very unrealistic. If Kevin came to me today and said, Mandy, I need a process X, Y, and Z automated by the end of next week, I'll say, no, Kevin, that's not going to happen. For one, I haven't done the discovery work on it. I don't know all the steps. I don't know the full process. And it takes time to build these processes out with automation. So an unrealistic time frame is okay to say no. And then again, if a process is part of a larger process that potentially is in a roadmap down the road for a full reimagination, full change on how it's currently done to a different level, that may be something to consider to not do. And there are cases where it's okay to do that, especially if the roadmap may be, 5 years down the road before this process is even, hits that roadmap for discovery. And the return on investment by doing this process now is high, it's very positive, then it's okay to do, it's a short, long-term process, and it's still very much um, a good process to do. But the key takeaway is that it is okay to say no. All right, I think we are ready for our next polling question. I think this was just an attendance check, so
Yep. So as soon as they just hit submit, then they're good. Polling question 3.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. And then now Darren is going to lead us into the fun part and showing the implementation of RPA. Darren?
Thanks, Mandy. Now that we know a little bit about RPA and also just, again, discovering and defining what we need to do, one thing to note about these implementations is it can, again, we've kind of mentioned, it can take various forms. It could be very simple. In fact, you can even run an RPA on your work computer, yourself. However, it can also become more complex where it has to, again, run on a virtual machine, somewhere, because it needs to always be there and be ready. And that's often called unattended, meaning there's no human logged into their computer. It's just going to run and do everything that it needs to. Now, regardless of the scale of the project and whether it's what's called attended, which is, again, you being logged in yourself, or unattended, which is running without you having to actually be on a workstation with your computer open. And there's going to be a few prerequisites that we need to make sure are in place for this to run. Now, and I mean, most of this, again, like Kevin said, like a lot of this you may already have, especially if you're running it on your personal workstation. So when you're trying to first get, start and learn about RPA, and maybe kind of if you're trying to do some citizen development and create your, your own small one, obviously having a user account in Microsoft is the first step. And for for a more line of business application where it's a business critical process that you may be replacing, oftentimes you'll use a service account in order to do that. And that service account, obviously, a lot of times most ITs will have like multi-factor authentication, security requirements for, for all of us users. we love those authenticator apps and pop-ups. But for service account, because it is automated, that may not always work out in using MFA. However, there are ways, again, to mitigate that risk using limiting where that account can be used to only those VMs that it's running on. Besides the account, though, is licensing. You're going to want a Power Automate Premium license, and that Power Automate Premium license is going to allow you to run automations and also give you access to what's called premium connectors or premium actions in your either cloud flow or in a desktop flow. Other than that is, again, having an Office license or a Microsoft license. And then the next one is going to be Power Automate Process license. And this is strictly for unattended. So when it's running on a VM, you're going to need that Power Automate license to run it on a VM unattended. And you're going to need at least one license for each RPA process that's like running at one time. So if you want to run, a process on 5 different VMs all at one time, then you'll need one for each one that's running. But again, to start off, if you're just going to running it on your personal laptop or computer, then that's not necessarily required. Besides, the licensing is going to be, again, the hardware. You have your personal workstation that you can do some of this on, but for that, again, that line of business or one that needs to be always on or always running or running at odd times, a lot of times you're going to use a virtual machine. And then now on your virtual machines or your desktop, of course, is going to like what software or applications are you going to need? Power Automate desktop app is going to be the first thing that needs to be installed. But then addition to that is going to be, any software that's required for your automation. So if we're working with Excel files, then we need Excel on the VMs, all of the VMs or in the workstation. If we're going to be working with like an AS400 system that may be using some session manager, then we need that installed. If it's going to be, whatever that software may be that your automation needs to work with, that has to be on all of the VMs or all the places that it's going to be running. And then finally is going to be, again, this is for business, line of business automation is a Power Platform environments. And this is just more of a good development standard where you're going to have like a development environment, and then you're going to have a production Power Platform environment. Then with all of those prerequisites checked off, we can go ahead and start looking further into our actual implementation. Now, right here is just a simple business case of an implementation for bank reconciliation. So, we've already done the discovery, so now we have some assumptions like, where is this starting at? What are the what data points do we need? And then also like, how is it going to be outputted? Like, what's the end result? That deliverable at the end of this automation. And then you can kind of see for this bank reconciliation, we're going to start with a SharePoint upload, and then that's going to really be what triggers the rest of it. And then, that's going to start our flow, our cloud flow, and then from the cloud flow, it's also going to run our desktop flow, which is going to be on the VM, and then at the bottom you can actually see where there's the final output. Now that we kind of see like that overview, we're going to go a little bit more into specifically like the cloud flow and then the desktop flow. And so this is really, again, this is a basic implementation. And on the cloud flow, the important thing is, again, the trigger, which is that first action in your cloud flow. And you can see where it says when a file is created in SharePoint. Now, depending on your automation, that may not be the correct way to begin your process. It could be, I need to run this every morning, or at this time, or if it when an email comes in to a specific email box, then you can change that trigger, that action, so that way it corresponds with how your process needs to begin. And then of course you can add more logic and conditions in there based on your personal need. And finally is going to be like, how do we call our desktop flow from the cloud? And here we can see that a flow built with a Power Automate for desktop. That's the action that is going to start our desktop flow. And you can see where we choose the desktop flow that we want to run. How is it going to run, attended or unattended? And then typically that's going to be unattended. And then as well as we can pass in information to that desktop flow for it to work with. Right. Now that we've kind of seen that, again, the cloud flow and how it's running, now we can go ahead and look a little bit further into the desktop flow. So the desktop flow is going to be a lot similar to the cloud flow. You're going to have actions which are going to do things. Again, those actions are mimicking in the desktop flow like what the human is going to do, and a little bit extra, which is like launch Excel, close Excel, run a macro, connect to open up a web browser and go to a website. Now, I mentioned just a moment ago about how we can pass information to the cloud flow, or from the cloud flow to the desktop flow, but here we can, in the desktop flow, we still also have to say, hey, you need to look for this information coming from that cloud flow. And here where it's called an input variable, which means it's going to get something from that cloud flow. And then so you just go ahead and define it, and then that allows your cloud flow to act on that information that it's getting passed. And really that's all it is to the implementation. Cloud flow to start it and kind of control everything, and then the desktop flow is going to actually do the work. And now let's go ahead and go to the next one where here is going to be the actual automation in running itself. So here I actually record it where I'm uploading the file to SharePoint, and you're not going to really see anything because this would be as if it was actually running on a server or VM somewhere, and it's pretty quick. And it's actually even quicker than this because I had to slow it down a lot for the videos just so that way it wasn't just a couple flashes on your screen. But again, it drops it in, and then it's going to open up Excel, combine those different files that it needs to, and then it outputs it. And you can see how it has the reconciliation and whatnot. And really, it's that's all it is. It's fairly it takes obviously work to learn it, but at the end of the day, it isn't too complex. And and now that you kind of have that background of and see that from like an overview, is what can you do from here? Like, where do I go? Kevin mentioned the in a day trainings, and that's the one from Microsoft is automation in a day. It's usually like an 8-hour course, with breaks and whatnot, and you take it in one day, and it'll cover cloud flows and desktop flows. The other one is again Microsoft Learn, where it's self-paced, and then finally is going to be the Power Automate community. When you have questions and there's issues, you can always go there.
All right. Well, thank you all. Amazing presentations. And I know you make it seem so simple, but it is in fact highly technical. You got to train it, right? You got to build them. You got to know what you're doing. So if you would like to discuss RPA, options, building, whatever, please lock in a yes. We will follow up with you and just figure out where you're at in your process. I would also like to call attention to the related resources box because we actually have 2 articles in there authored by Mandy. So one is about identifying projects for automation. So it's like that step 1. And then the step 2, which she covered the discovery phase. So it's more diving into those in-depth, should it be automated questions. So those are great places to start. Obviously connect with us as well. And thank you all for your time. And I think we're answering one question about Python in the background. So, all right. So if you have more questions, get them in these last few seconds. Reach out to us with that survey response as well. And thank you so much for your time today and learning more about RPA.